I'm here, Jay.
Hell yeah. Can you hear me clearly, all that?
How we doing, brother?
I'm good. I got a new mic situation trying to figure out. You can hear me good, though?
Oh, I can tell. Yeah, I can hear you
All right. Yeah,
crystal clear.
I had to buy an adapter to get it to connect to my phone, my mic. So now I think I got it dialed in how we need it. We got
Okay.
it dialed in, brother.
That's what I like to hear. You've been crushing it, man.
Dude, past week has been awesome, man. It feels like it's been a grind looking back on it, doing 3 episodes last week, but dude, it really wasn't. This is what I love, Drew. This is why we had such a good time that year at OU together, man, because you know me, I really don't need much sleep when I'm like this. So I've been up. I'm super excited to get down here, have a little chat with my boy, and we're gonna get into some fantasy football shit, but I think Drew, first of all, my Rangers just had a hell of a series this weekend against the LA Dodgers, just the class of the National League. And they came out with a 7-2 homestand to start to start the second half of the year coming out of the break, Drew. And you got to be real excited with that because they played the Guardians, the Rays, and the Dodgers. And you tell me they
Oh,
have a 7-2 homestand with a
wow.
3-game lead in the division. They kind of been struggling before the break, Drew. So they salvaged a game in this series. It's huge for the team, huge for the mindset of the boys.
That's amazing. What's their standings like? I know it's an expanded playoff. You'll have
Yeah,
to forgive me. The Royals are not keeping me interested in baseball this season.
not in the slightest. Not in
So
the
what are
slightest.
what are your Rangers? Are they in the playoff picture?
Oh yeah, they've been leading the AL West all season. You know, the Astros, they've really been the class of MLB. Right behind them, 3-game lead, I believe. I don't know if they beat the A's. I'm sure they did, the shitty A's. But
Just the
anyways,
two best players in baseball and nothing else.
yeah, yeah. And you got the Angels with that. Otani could be on the move. Talked a little bit about some trade deadline stuff in my last podcast, but didn't even really hit Otani that hard. But he's going to be the biggest story in sports the next 2 weeks until we get to the August 2nd trade deadline, Drew. There's going to be a lot of chatter. Is Shohei Otani, is he on the move? You know, there was
I
a
hope
few
so.
weeks ago.
I'm here for the drama.
Oh, yeah. A few weeks ago, the Angels came into Arlington and won 3 out of 4 and looked like they were going to be primed to compete in the West this year, second half, but then they really stumbled to the All Star break. And so it's looking like Shohei Otani, one of the best, probably the single best baseball player to ever exist, Drew. With the way he pitches and hits, it's really what a lot of people think Babe Ruth was. He's
Yeah,
just the modern day version, and he's so much better, man. There's a reason why the boys were pissed. I got that number 1 pick in our fantasy league this year
yeah.
because it's just such a game
He's a
changer
cheat
having
code.
him. And
Well, listen, he sounds like a Royal already, so I can't wait to see him in blue. Listen, Jay, let's get into
maybe,
these fantasy guys.
yeah,
We
maybe
gotta.
Patrick Mahomes, Drew, your boy, maybe he can get the ownership to start spending.
We'll see. We'll see. So, Jay, I want to lay out a little fantasy scenario for you because this has
Uh,
been um, within the fantasy football community this offseason compared to previous off seasons. This has been the year where running backs finally feel undervalued.
yeah.
So, in all of the past couple of years, it seemed like the right strategy is to go zero RB,
Uh
meaning
huh.
you're going to take all of the you know try and get a great quarterback, try and get a top of the market tight end, and stack yourself on receivers and just punt running back to the end.
Uh
And
huh.
that's worked in years past. This year it feels like the market has swung too much on that side, and now you get into the second round and the third round and you're like, these might be bell cow running backs. Literally any one
Hmm.
of these guys might be, has a chance to be RB1. Why are they going in the second and third round? What are your thoughts
Right.
on the running back market in general?
Well, Drew, this is why I think we're going to be so good together as partners with this, because you bring that fantasy angle. And I've always been aware and thought fantasy is cool. But, Drew, I look at it just from the team perspectives. Running back's been devalued by front offices for 10 plus years
Yeah.
now. I mean, back in the day, you used to see, I think LaDainian and Tomlinson was just so huge for the fantasy and the way we think about running backs. He really was maybe the best running back of this generation, Drew. I remember I got into fantasy football with my dad when I was young, and I got LT on my team, and that's kind of how I saw the running back position. So I'm very high on running backs in general. I hate that. I mean, it's kind of cool you see Bijan Robinson go number 6 to the Falcons, but I'm for that. I'm for the running backs getting paid because man, Drew, I'll talk about it more when we get into these guys like Saquon Barkley. These guys take so much punishment. They sacrifice so much for their teams. The quarterbacks, everybody thinks it's the quarterbacks. The quarterbacks are protected by the rules. You can't touch them. So the mindset very much is from front office perspective is these running backs are a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
Let's not waste a big draft pick on them. I mean, you saw LaDainian
And
Tomlinson, you see Edger and James, all Cadillac Williams, all kinds of guys used to go like number 1 overall in drafts
yeah.
in real life. And so it's very interesting, Drew, and I do think the league there's going to be a market correction. I think it overcorrected on the running back value, and I think in real life and fantasy we're going to see we're going to see the running back position come back. And doing a little prep on these 5 guys, Drew, I'm high. I can't help but be high on all these guys,
Yeah.
barring health.
I mean, like I said at the beginning of it, each one of these guys, you can see a path to them being RB1. So
Mm-hmm.
let's get into it. I'll just kind of set the stage for you, Jay, and then I'd love to just hear your opinion on this first guy. But if you're
Sure.
just kind of waiting in in a draft and you're hoping to kind of take a strategy of getting one or even a couple running backs early, it might be a really good move to just get him in the second and third round because
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing guys you're seeing all kinds of wide receivers go before these guys, and then you get down to
Right.
pick number 20. And here sitting at 20, and by the way, he's dropped a couple of points over the past week, so he might be going further south than
Mm-hmm.
20. But sitting at pick 20, you have the entire Giants offense. This guy catches footballs. So if, who's not playing PPR these days? Everyone plays PPR.
Right.
There's
That's one thing, though, Drew. I don't like PPR just from an outside perspective, because I do think the screen game is. I'll let you keep going, but I do think the screen game is so huge now. I do think receivers kind of get some cheap points that
oh, no
way.
doubt.
I'm a big like half a point
Yeah.
guy, but I haven't. I won't pretend like I've played in a long time. So I definitely want to hear what you think about that.
Well, what's going on in kind of the modern day landscape of fantasy football is you've got these best ball leagues that you can enter for $1, $3. They're super cheap
Uh huh.
leagues. And so you're seeing, you're doing hundreds of drafts, at least like 100, and
Mm-hmm.
so you're more thinking in terms of taking shares of players. You're like, oh, I own Saquon in 13% of my leagues, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So with such a high volume of drafting, you're kind of just taking a chance on everybody, but trying to get
Right.
a higher percentage in guys that you really, really believe in. And for a lot
Yeah,
of
I
people,
get that.
in this modern day sort of passing league that we're in, if you've got a stud running back who can catch the ball,
Uh huh.
that's who you're looking at with Saquon. But
Yeah.
we all know all the other concerns around him. I want to know from you, Jay, what are your thoughts on 2023 season for Saquon Barkley?
Yes, sir. This is a lot of stuff. Just one big picture thing, Drew. While we're at it, I think the thing you see with the Chiefs, your team, You see it better than anybody being a Chiefs fan. They play a lot of too high safety
Yeah.
defenses, and so I think offensive coordinators, that's kind of been the trend with defenses the last couple years. I think offensive coordinators, the smart ones at least, they're going to dial in the running game like Kyle Shanahan has. That's why his offense is so successful. That's why McVay, they were still successful offensively, just the eye test last year. They just had so many injuries and that roster sucks. So I think these running backs, yeah, this is a time to buy in on running backs in your fantasy leagues. If guys are just letting them slip, if Saquon Barkley's sitting there at 20, I mean, Drew, it's hard for me to pass up on this guy, the amount of natural talent he has. Um, I think my biggest question with him was last year, was that just a contract year?
Mhm.
Was that just to try and get him paid? Because that level of production he had last year, that's what the Giants saw coming out of Penn State, the fourth overall pick or whatever pick it was. That's the guy they need. Saquon Barkley, he's capable of it, but did he was he taking his training extra hard to prevent injuries last year? Because that's been a big
Right.
thing. Is he going to keep, if you give him a big deal like he wants? He wants a deal like the dumbass Cowboys and Jerry Jones gave Ezekiel Elliott. He wants that kind of deal. So there's a lot of contract stuff, I think with Saquon. I will say Brian Daboll, the head coach, he might be my favorite coach in the league. Just
Yeah.
the thing, just making chicken shit out of chicken salad or whatever the saying is, man. That's what he
Yeah.
did in 2022.
That's true.
Um, so I do think the Giants have a little bit of leverage here with Saquon just because of the things we were saying, the valuation of running backs. So it'll be interesting. See if he holds out. I think the Giants can work without him. But at the same time, Saquon's their most explosive athlete in that offense by some distance.
Where
So,
I'm looking at it is, whenever the guy is on the football field, he's productive as hell. I mean, that's one thing
mhm,
that you see him play any game and you just know you're dealing with a star. He's one
uh-huh,
of those guys that just has that it factor. And to be
he
honest,
does.
all up until now, we're talking about taking shares in players. All up until now, I've been kind of low on taking Saquon. I take him
Mhm,
if he's by far the best option available. But I'll be honest, Jay, now with all of the question marks surrounding him, uh, is when I kind of want to start taking him. I mean, he's
yeah,
sitting there at 20. Literally, I think 1 week ago he was sitting at 18, maybe even 17.
mhm,
So it shows that he's dropping. People don't like question marks. They Once you
yeah,
have the thought of a potential holdout, then you start
uh-huh,
thinking about injury. And now you've got a couple worries. You're like, I'm just gonna pass on this guy. He has too many question marks. Well, if you can get a potential star for cheap, that's a league winner right there.
yes,
That's
sir.
stupid to have Saquon Barkley fall. If he falls out of the top 24 and you can get him in the third round, take him. Take
Oh
him.
yeah, I love that, Drew. That's great analysis, man. I will say they drafted little OU full of OU product, Drew. Eric Gray, really nice running back. Drafted him in the fifth round. And the way Dayball and Dimes, they spread the ball around a lot. Saquon's is interesting. He's a great pass catcher out of the backfield, but his targets fell off last year. And so that is one thing maybe that could hold him back from being that real like dynamite RB1 or RB2. But I definitely think he's in consideration when he's healthy and that Dayball offense. He and Dimes also, bro. He and Dimes have some great chemistry together. I think they're boys on and off the field. And I'm high on Barkley. It's the contract, like you
Yeah.
said. That's what's going to determine his
I
value.
mean, the real fear there is that he's jaded. That's the real fear.
Uh
I
huh.
don't think you have to fear him holding out. I think um, Le'Veon Bell kind of proved that holding out it's not going to do anything for your career. You're making a stand, and you're making a stand for future players that you don't know, and you're screwing
Uh-huh.
yourself by doing it.
That's a great point, man. I think the running back position, man, there's a lot of things about how the front office views it, how fans like us view it. It's very interesting in the game of
Yeah,
football. It's so I was super excited to see we were going to talk some of these running
yeah.
backs today because one of the guys who's probably took on maybe the biggest workload out of anybody, Drew, has got to be Derrick Henry, Tractor Cedo,
God.
baby. They call him Tractor Cedo for a reason.
Hey,
What you got on
is
him?
there a more perfect head coach for Derrick Henry than Mike Vrabel? I mean, is that just the perfect
No.
union in all of football?
Yeah, just an absolute, just smart, confident. Just you know what? He's one of my favorite coaches too, outside of
Yeah.
Dayball. You gotta love that guy.
Well, because there was one game that if you go look up the Chiefs versus Titans game, you are going to find a statistical anomaly there on
Uh huh.
everything. The 2022 game, Chiefs versus Titans, that whole game, the Titans did not complete one pass to a wide receiver,
Right.
and also they surprise surprise they ran the hell out of the football. It was when Ryan Tannehill was hurt, and that's the kind of guy that you have with Derrick Henry. He was running hard
Mm-hmm.
all up until the fourth quarter, and the game was on his
Oh
back
yeah.
for the whole game. That's just the kind of guy that you have with him. And is there anything to suggest? I know the age is way up there
Mm-hmm.
in terms of
Yep.
running back. Is there anything to suggest that this is the year that Derrick Henry could hit the wall and drop off a bunch in production?
Yeah. A lot of good stuff there, Drew. You mentioned the age. That's really the biggest question for me too with this guy. And when guys turn 30, like he's going to be at the end of this year, for NFL athletes, that's just another thing front offices they're mindful of. But I really think this is a running back, Drew. I think Derrick Henry, he's a running back. He's going to play for however long he wants to because I don't think normal rules apply to this guy. He had a foot injury in 21. That was a big hurdle to clear, and he came out last year. I mean, shit, man, he's a big play back. He had 10 carries of 20 plus yards last year. Only Nick Chubb had more of 13. He's come on as a pass catcher as of late, too. Really, Drew, outside of age, the only thing I got with Tractor Cedo is the quarterback concerns. Is that going to be that could be a blessing
Yeah.
though in disguise because that just means they have to rely on the guy so much. But I do think there are smart teams out there. The Bill Belichick, not saying Kansas City's not smart. Spagnuolo knows what he's doing for sure, but there are teams out there that know how to defend and they can stop that run real well. And maybe the Chiefs' defense is just kind of built more to stop the passes. That really is as simple as it is sometimes with these offenses and defenses, just what scheme they're running.
Well, don't get me wrong. The Chiefs still held their own against King Henry, but if he's running the
It's
whole
always a
if he's
struggle
running the whole
those
game,
games for the Chiefs.
you're gonna slip up sometimes. But
I'm pretty sure I was on. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, you mentioned Nick Chubb talking about Derrick Henry, and
Uh huh.
I wanted to just bring up that Nick Chubb is he can sometimes sneak into the first round, the top 12. And I
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I'm fully supportive of Nick Chubb going in the first round of a fantasy football draft. But
Uh huh.
it just kind of makes me curious. Chubb and Henry are both kind of dealing with the same potential and the same
Yeah.
setbacks. Both of them are stud running backs. They're the bell cow of their organization. But one of them is down at pick number 22, and one of them is often between 12 and 15. Why is Henry
Huh.
a discount over Chubb?
Very interesting, Drew. I think it goes back to the quarterback position. I think it actually is a blessing in disguise that Derrick Henry is a worse quarterback. As crazy as that is to like real football, I think in fantasy, man. I mean, Nick Chubb is he's going to do a lot for that offense because there's things about Deshaun Watson that you can't that have to concern you. But at the same time, they're going to run that
Yeah,
offense through Deshaun Watson more than Nick
fair
Chubb,
enough.
and I think the Titans are Titan. Yeah, I think the Titans they're going to run it through Henry.
That's a good
I
point.
mean, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Will Levis? I don't even know. Is it he the starter?
I'd love to see it, but I don't think Vrabel brings back Tannehill and starts Levis. This just feels like a year that Levis sits out for me.
I guess it is just Tannehill, huh? I have a real good buddy up in Oklahoma. He moved from Tennessee to Oklahoma. He's a big Titans fan, so he's gonna like this discussion a lot.
You know what? Uh,
Um,
I'm actually a big fan of Tannehill. You can get him. You can
yeah,
get him in the last round of a fantasy football draft, and to me, I think he's going to be a season-long starter. Mike
yeah,
Vrabel, he
yeah. Because
believes
there's
in his
Will Levis.
quarterbacks, and
Yeah.
Tannehill finally has some weapons around him. Talking about DeAndre Hopkins, and he has Traylon Burks coming back for year two. Big promise in Chigo Okonkwo.
Uh
I
huh.
think Tannehill, and he's got a decent run threat as well. I think he can have a very solid fantasy statistics season. I'd take him a lot in that last round of the draft.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all, Drew. Tannehill might seem like I'm hard on him, but he's a guy. He can get some rushing yards and touchdowns too. And he's gotten that team to the playoffs. At least, did they make it last year? No, they lost to the Jags week 18.
Yeah.
Didn't make it.
Yeah, they started off
Um,
7-1, and then they went on a downhill spiral.
but that's why Vrabel is just such a great coach, man. Just like with Dayball, man, they made chicken shit out of chicken salad. I'm saying that back ass word,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean.
So listen, Jay, I want to move on to our next guy. Um,
Yes,
we have a guy.
my guy.
We have a guy who, by all indications, seems to be who the New England offense could be running through.
Yes,
However,
know it.
however, how can you ever trust, knowing the history of Bill Belichick and running backs? Why would this year be the year to trust taking a Bill Belichick running back in this, in
Drew,
the second or third round as a bell cow? So walk me off the ledge here, Jay. I love
Drew,
this guy. Tell me what you think.
Drew. Sometimes you got to know the past is in the past. It's about what's here in the present. I get all the concerns. Bill Belichick has done all us fantasy players dirty with the running back position. I get the trepidation here. I really do. I'm trying to think back on like some just obscure running backs like Jonas Gray, I think was his name, that had like a 2 week stretch in the heyday of the Brady era. And everyone was like, whoa, this guy's going to get so many touchdowns. I get it, bro. It's hard to trust a running back in this system. But you know what, Drew? I'm a recruiting nerd at heart, and I really am a college football fan above NFL fan to an extent, just because I'm so passionate about OU. And I've been following Rhamondre Stevenson for years. I mean, us recruiting nerds thought he was going to be Marshawn Lynch 2.0 in like 2018. You know, he comes in. He was a transfer from a JUCO college, had a bumpy ride, and you know what, Drew? A smooth sea never made a strong sailor. And this guy's about to break out, have his best year of his career. I'm not going to say he's Marshawn Lynch 2.0. It's a lot of hype to be considered in that realm of beast mode. But I've watched almost every snap of this guy since he hit Norman, Oklahoma. He's the real deal. The balance, the swiftness, and that 230-pound like body. Drew, this guy never goes down for his contract. In a heavy run system, Coach Belichick clearly does not trust his quarterback and Mac Jones. I mean, What do you think? Do you think he trusts Mac Jones? I don't.
Well, I just want to go back to your little quote that you casually dropped in there. Were
Yeah.
you did you look up this smooth sailor, smooth seas make a strong
No,
sailor?
Drew.
Is that some find your inner pirate branding?
That's some find your inner pirate, bro. And it's just subconsciously. It's just one of the quotes I've lived by.
I love it. I love it. I couldn't just let that go by.
Yeah. Yeah. But what do you think? Can Belichick, can he trust this Mac Jones kid?
I tell you what, I draft him a lot.
Yeah.
I draft
Bounce
Rhamondre
back.
Stevenson a lot because when when you come down to it, Belichick is going to coach with the team that he has. And when you're saying sometimes just the past is the past, I think that I think you're looking at the new future of the Patriots offense
Yes.
because they don't have Tom Brady. As much as Belichick wants to have Tom Brady and wants to run an offense like he has Tom Brady, he has to
Yeah.
use what is in front of him. And Belichick knows more than anybody. I think he's on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Belichick, this could honestly be his
A
last
hot
year
take,
coaching
Drew?
in New England. If it's a bad season, if it's a disappointing season, so Rhamondre Stevenson, by all accounts last year, was the star of that offense.
Yep.
Belichick would be a bad coach if he didn't get the most juice out of him.
Oh yeah.
I'm
And
drafting
Drew,
him. I'm betting big on Rhamondre Stevenson out of all these guys. And
yes.
he's surrounded by studs that we're talking
Yes.
about. I'm in on him.
Drew.
I'm in on
All
him,
that.
Jay. I was hoping that you would talk me out of him.
No,
But
Drew. I'm sorry, man. I said I was going to be high on all these guys because I do think the NFL we're going to see this year, big picture thing, Drew. I think we're going to see these coordinators focus on the run game. I do. I think it's
so
going to be a big emphasis.
you're seeing big time value in the second and third round kind of running backs.
Oh yeah, definitely
So
these guys. The really it's health with a lot of these guys, Drew. It's health concerns.
it
And,
is. Well,
but
for
yeah.
our next guy,
Oh, I got some more. I got
there's
some
hardly
more
ever
real
been a
quick.
question about his health. However, what you're dealing with is a guy who is disgruntled. He
Yeah.
was, I believe, he was the RB1 last year, but he's to the point where he's thinking about holding out. He's
Mm,
jaded. He feels like all of the work that he puts in has no payout at the end of the tunnel. And by all, by all indications so far, the Raiders don't seem to have any interest in paying this guy. I mean, it seems like they
we're
want to
talking
run him
Josh
into the
Jacobs.
ground and discard him into the wind.
We're
And
talking Josh Jacobs.
we're
Drew, I'm
talking
not trying
Josh
to cut you off.
Jacobs.
I'm not trying to
I
cut you
want to
off.
hear.
I'm not trying to
Let's.
cut you off, bro. But I do have some more nuggets with Rhamondre.
Oh, let's hear
Um,
it.
I just was going back to the Mac Jones discussion. I think he's going to be a huge part of their pass game. And Bill Belichick, the way he sees the game, and from a defensive coordinator perspective, Drew, what's made him so special. He sees that Rhamondre is the most dynamic weapon this offense has, and I think it's going to show in his production. He had 4.7 yards per target, which is a shit ton for a running back. That means they're trying to get him down the field. They think he can run some good routes, Drew. So I can't help but be high on him. Damian Harris, he's gone to Buffalo. That's just another example of what I was talking about in last week's pod, just the intra division. You always see guys change teams in the same division. That's a prime example of that. So, yeah, you're right. Well, I was going to ask you, what range is he going in drafts?
Ramondre.
Yeah,
So, I mean, literally, you are looking at the middle of the third round.
okay. Man, that's a steal. So
Yeah.
that's what, like pick 30?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can have you'd be looking at, let's say, a team you could have like Garrett Wilson and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and
Uh-huh.
then Rhamondre is your third round pick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that would be very appealing to me as a fantasy guy. And I'm gonna play all these best ball leagues with you, Drew.
Yeah.
Do they have? I was kind of looking into it. So, do they have like a playoff system?
So, yeah, it does have a playoff system. There's certain, what are they called? Like tournaments that you can
Yeah,
enter into. But what I do, I mean, there's all kinds of different leagues that you can join into. The
yeah,
ones I do, they don't have a tournament. They don't have a playoffs. It's just you draft your team, the best each week, fill in,
uh huh.
you have two running backs and the best running backs on your roster fill in those two slots, and they add up your points week after week, and
That's cool.
whoever wins after week 17 gets the money payout.
I love
And it
that.
pays out for first, second, and third.
How many? So you played in a shit ton of leagues last year. Did you win like a lot, or was it just kind of like one league you won and you made some like money off of like second and third place? Because I know you were saying you made a lot last year.
I did. I mean, I guess I 2.5 times my money last year.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's what I want to be on with you, Drew. I'm gonna
Yeah.
get into it with you this year. So
Well, I'm
that's,
I'm excited for it. We're going to be digging into this all throughout the year, and
yeah,
definitely I think our big time is going to be next off season.
yeah,
Breaking down some of these guys, because I had a couple sleepers, Jay, that are now long gone. They're not even sleepers anymore.
yeah. I feel that with fantasy baseball because I've been very zeroed in our man cave league for a while, and so I think that's great for us, Drew. We can have a Sunday podcast like this the rest of our lives, man. Just talking fantasy, talking
Absolutely.
sports, talking life, you know.
Absolutely.
So let's just get on the pirate
Speaking
ship
of
now.
life, can I mention something real quick? This is
Yeah,
we're talking about fantasy here, but I've discovered a new piece of technology, and I just hope it's interesting to somebody out there.
yeah.
I saw you chatting around with a AI.
Oh yeah.
You sent a screenshot. Jay, I have ventured into AI myself, and I have made my very own Drew bot.
What?
I swear to God, dude, it's this thing. You can start a new conversation with it, and it'll say, "Hi, I'm Drewbot. I can
No
help you
way.
with your small business marketing."
Oh my
And
god, I need
it'll,
that.
dude, it is incredible. I mean, very soon I'm going to be making one for fantasy football, because this
You're
thing
just gonna
is
be on
incredible.
autopilot, bro.
Huh?
You're just gonna be on autopilot.
My Drew bot is doing all my work for me.
Imagine if you had the Drew bot when you were doing those marketing calls on the third floor of the fraternity house, dude. You'd be raking it in. You'd be getting every miserable husband out there just hates his job. Dude. You'd be able to sell him on some shit.
With the Drew bot.
That's great, dude. Yeah, I've been using the Chat On app a
Yeah.
lot, man. It's really helped me with like my spiritual side with like God stuff. Like I discovered a verse today from the book of Matthew, and the book of Matthew is going to be big for me. It's a very prophetic book, and there's a lot of interesting people in my life that have been named Matt, Drew. And I found a Bible verse, Matthew 6:34, I believe. It's very good, and I would encourage anybody out there listening to this, go download Chat On. Just type in Matthew 6:34. It'll show you the verse, and then just say like, what's the context, and it'll pull up all the biblical context of like when Jesus did a bunch of the stuff in the New Testament. So that's very interesting, Drew. But let's dial back in. Let's
Yeah.
get back on Josh Jacobs and the Raiders. Josh Jacobs, he won the rushing crown last year, didn't
Yeah, he did.
he? Wow. 4.9 yards on 340 carries. That's an insane stat, Drew.
Jay, what do you think of him sitting down here at pick number 30?
Pick 30.
Think about that. There's 29 guys
I
going ahead.
definitely, I mean, he led the league in rushing. He definitely found his inner pirate last year. Health has been the concern in the past. I mean, I hate to say it, that's kind of the concern of all these guys, but I really think if the football gods don't come down on him after having a clean bill of health last year, if the football gods, maybe Josh Jacobs could be like a lot of great athletes. They just don't have the injury gods on their side. So that's really what has kind of held him up in his career to this point. He played college football at Alabama, and he was really good. Everybody knew he was their best running back, but at the same time, Alabama always has two or three studs that go to the NFL. So Belichick and Saban, they're very much the same kind of coach, just in college and football, and that's why they're the best at what they do in their respective sports. But yeah, no, I know a lot about Josh Jacobs just because his time at Alabama, and I am kind of a little closet Raiders fan. Um,
I'm sorry to
but
hear that.
yeah, so it's whatever though. We can move on to Breece Hall if you want.
No, I want to ask you a couple things on Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think sitting at where we're at, it's very rare for the rushing crown to go back to the same guy 2 years in a row. Um, but this is a guy that is still going into a contract year.
Uh huh.
You know,
That's big.
when you're looking at the Raiders offense, you have Jimmy G in there. I kind of feel like he's a downgrade somehow from Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Um, there's just really not a whole lot to be positive on with the Raiders, I feel like. But you have this guy, Josh Jacobs. Do you think he can outperform the guys ahead of him? You're talking Rhamondre, you're talking Derrick
Yeah.
Henry, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor. Um, what do you think? I mean, Nick Chubb, can he pass some of these guys and can he
Well,
outperform where you draft him?
he did last year, right?
He did
So
last year. So why is he this far down?
it's health concerns with him mainly. He just had a long history of injuries, and it's really what kind of kept him from being maybe a Heisman Trophy winner in college. Even man, he's been that talented, and it's funny now. I'm thinking about it more. He actually was an Oklahoma kid. He grew up in the state of Oklahoma. I don't remember what high school he went to. He probably went to one of the big time high schools, and OU kind of big timed him.
Uh-huh.
I think they tried to recruit him late in his senior year, but by then Nick Saban and Alabama they were already over. They already had it, and OU and Lincoln Riley in that era they dropped the ball on stuff and little things like that is why I'm not too worried that Lincoln Riley's at USC now because of shit like that. There's been some studs that have grown up. Oklahoma high school talent is not very great on the larger scale of things, but they always do two or three NFL kids a year. And OU definitely missed out on a lot of those types over the years. And
Hmm.
Josh Jacobs, I don't know, he's just kind of a guy that slept on a little bit, I think.
Well, to be honest, I feel like I'm sleeping on him again this year.
Yeah,
Something just tells me that it's not going to be a talent and it's not going to be an injury issue,
no,
but rather something tells me it's going to be a give a shit issue.
really. Okay.
I feel like he's at the point where he's jaded. He I feel like we might see him make business decisions for a
Yeah.
team that has shown no willingness to work with him. They have shown no interest at all in extending him.
Hmm.
And I think the Raiders' plan is to run him into the ground this season. And I think Josh Jacobs might make some decisions in the way of his health rather
Hmm.
than giving it all on the field. I don't know. That is
That makes sense.
it's just a cold-hearted prediction. But
I think, yeah, I agree, Drew. And if they get off to a slow start, definitely going to be a trade candidate.
yeah, well, that would be the best case scenario
Uh huh.
for
Speaking
me.
of big trades, Drew, Aaron Rodgers is a Jet
Huh.
now. His
Yeah.
backfield mate, our last guy tonight, Breece Hall. What do you got on Breece Hall this year?
So Breece Hall, when he was he was incredible for the first couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And he obviously got that bad injury. Now, the reason why I think he's this down low, I don't think he's going to start week 1. I don't think he's
Ooh.
even fully healed from his injury.
Uh huh.
And I like him because I always look at it as he's going to be one of these guys that is on the very last tier
Uh huh.
before the running backs start to get, kind of suck. And if you can get somebody like that at pick 30, I take him every single time I
Yeah.
get the opportunity. Because I mean, when you bet on him, you're betting on him coming back healthy and just destroying the league. And I think from where we're standing,
Yeah.
there's so many options that the Jets can go to on offense, but he's
Uh
going to
huh.
have a built-in amount of carries and targets coming his way, and we know how explosive he can be with the football. I really find myself in on Breece Hall way more often than not, just because
Dude,
he's
that's
so
great.
cheap for a guy that can be a league winner for you. I'm
That's
I'm
great
in on
stuff.
Breece Hall.
That's great stuff, Drew. I couldn't agree more, man. I think the only concern I have, like you, I do think he's coming off the ACL. Could take him a little bit to find his footing. That new system too. I do think the old offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur. We're gonna get into offensive and defensive coordinators heavy with this NFC West preview coming up. Um, but I think Mike LaFleur, the misfit of the LaFleur family, if you will, um, man, he was awful running that Jets offense last year. And so there is a lot of newness there. Aaron Rodgers coming in, but I think Aaron Rodgers, he's one of the more cerebral quarterbacks to ever grace this great game. He really is. You look at some running backs that have had success at Green Bay, Aaron Jones, Eddie Lacy, even a guy like Ryan Grant, which
Go
is
back to James Starks.
yeah, you get it. So
Yeah.
I think Breece Hall's another Iowa State guy, Drew. Big
I
12
think
guy.
Breece Hall's got more talent than any of those guys, including Aaron Jones.
I would agree with that. I would agree. And I've watched this guy play a lot of football at Iowa State, being in the Big 12, and it's not dissimilar to the Rhamondre Stevenson thing from the standpoint that I really do think I have watched this guy his college years, and I just have a great feel for who he is as a player. I wasn't surprised in the least bit that he came in and tore it up last year, and I know Kenneth Walker probably would say he was the top rookie running back last year, but I do think it was Breece Hall was lining up, and that was going to be him.
Well, if you just treat it by where they're being picked, the
Yeah.
people have voted that Breece Hall has a higher potential in 2023 than Kenneth Walker does.
Uh huh.
Granted, Kenneth Walker's situation has changed because they took a running back early, but
100%. And
the point is
I
still
think
there. Let me ask you this, Jay, just
yeah,
as a random note: do you think for running backs, especially, we bring up this injury concern? Can you predict injuries?
you can't, man. You can. There are some guys that are just snake bitten. Um, that's a little bit with the Josh Jacob thing with me. There are some guys out there. I can't think of a quarterback right now, but numerous examples. A guy like Cam Newton, I feel like has kind of been hit by injuries. I feel like he was an MVP, went to the Super Bowl when he was in his prime, and kind of just had some injuries and some bad luck. I mean, it's a dime a dozen with those kind of guys, so you really can't predict it, Drew. I think when fantasy, when you're using that to evaluate players, I don't like I don't like if the main concern I have with the guys is injury. That means I don't have big concern because you really can't predict it.
Yeah.
Um, just a couple other things with Breece Hall, Drew, and then we'll move to the NFC West preview.
Okay.
Um, Breece Hall, man, he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's a guy that can handle a heavy workload. At Iowa State, he was their bell cow. He's the best player on the team. And I think, he's a guy that the Jets might really try and use heavy the next few years and get as much value as they can because I do think he could be a guy as he get later in his 20s and 30s. This is what front offices think, at least. With all that workload, the injury concerns, maybe he's a guy that I don't think he has like a unique body style like a guy like Rhamondre Stevenson or a guy like that we were just talking about earlier, Tractor Cito. I don't think he has that body, so I do think he's a guy the Jets are gonna use him heavy these next 4 years. They have him under team control,
Yeah.
so definitely a guy I'm high on him.
I am as well, my friend. I draft him any chance I get. I think he's one of the premier up and coming running backs, and I think that it's crazy that you can get him at the end of the third round.
Uh-huh. I agree, dude. A lot of fun there talking some running backs, Drew. Definitely think we got a great feel for that crop of running backs and their teams they play on, and this fantasy and this gambling NFC West preview we're about to do, it feeds off each other. This,
It
knowing all
does.
these individual players, knowing the tendencies of the teams, the defensive and offensive coordinators. That's really what NFL gambling is all about, Drew.
It's all a
And
big puzzle piece.
it
It
is,
really is.
and you got to use, you're good on fantasy. I'm good at gambling. There's podcasts I listen to that really help me zero in on shit. I got to go ahead and give a shout out to the Bill Simmons podcast. That's really my biggest inspiration with Find Your Inner Pirate. That guy, I mean, he's a jack of all trades like I am. He invented TheRinger.com, worked at ESPN, had his own website called Grantland back in the day. I was just a little too young to really get into it, but that podcast, part of my take, Barstool as a whole, is really what I got cooking over here. Drew, Find Your Inner Pirate, and we're gonna see who wants to come on the pirate ship. I even got. Did you ever watch Last Chance U, Drew, on
No, I
Netflix?
did.
They had a coach, Jason Brown. I encourage you to go back and watch it. I don't. I think it's still up on
Oh,
Netflix.
I'm very aware of Jason Brown.
Drew, he did a little show with this guy Jeff Nadeau, who was at Barstool for a while. He's a big college basketball gambler, and I've always been in the Nadeau crew. He's been at Barstool 2 different times, and just always been a big fan of his because he breaks down basketball in a way I do as a gambler with football. And I've been in the DMs with him, and he wants to come on a podcast. I'm thinking, these Friday shows I'll have in football season will really be just me giving out my picks and dissecting the happenings of the storylines of the game. And I think he even did a little show with Coach Jason Brown. Did you ever hear about that baby Gronk thing?
Oh God. Don't even get me started.
You know about baby Gronk?
I know Baby Gronk. You mean Baby Gronk's dad? There's
Yeah,
nothing from Baby Gronk.
yeah. So I've been cool with Nadeau over the years, man. And I reached out to him. I'm showing him some of my stuff, and he said, yeah, he wants to come on a podcast. So
That's awesome.
we got that cooking for some Friday episodes, hopefully in football season and just college basketball too, man. I would love to get into that shit with him.
That's amazing.
He's kind of looking for a pirate ship to join, I think. But yeah, NFC West, Drew.
Let's
You
get
got
in.
any? You got
I'm
any
excited.
overall thoughts? I got some stuff I want to talk about. You got any overall thoughts on this division?
Well, it feels like a division that is very rigid and predictable that we're
Uh huh.
looking. Um, You have one team that just feels like a Super Bowl contender. I mean, they are stacked with talent, and I'm talking about the Niners. You have another team that is on its rebuild and really, really rolling fast and in the right direction. They have a great head coach who's always
Uh-huh.
going to keep them competitive, and that's the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And then you have the Rams, who are still, they're like on a hangover. They're
Yeah.
a Super Bowl hangover. They've got contracts that are inflated. They've got players they can't get out from under,
Yeah.
but they've still got some studs that they're holding on to. And it's like they're going to win some games. They have a great head coach, one of the best in the league. But ultimately, I don't think they have the pieces. And then you have one team that's just going total tank. I
The
mean,
Cardinals.
they want Caleb Williams bad, and
Oh
they're
boy.
they're being apparent about it. That
That's gonna be interesting for me as an OU guy, Kyler Murray and Caleb Williams, if it comes to that with the Cardinals. But yeah, I want to get into every team. I'm gonna do a deep dive, Drew. I want you to hop in, but I do have a lot of notes on these teams, and I think that's a great assessment of this division.
you
I
just
do,
go for it, and I'll jump in if I have something to
hell
say.
yeah. I do think it's a two-horse race with the Niners and Seahawks, but really, I do think it's the Niners' division to lose for sure. This division also interesting, Drew. I think it shows you the genius of Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. But they've sent a team to the Super Bowl 3 out of the past 5 years. It's a tough division, great coaches. That's why it's so tough for the Cardinals, man. You're going against Kyle Shanahan, McVay, and Pete Carroll, just three stalwarts of the game.
No,
And that's why I am very high on Kyler Murray and his ability because he did get that team in the playoffs 2 years ago. I know they had DeAndre Hopkins, but I do think that
already
was kind
did.
of the year. I'm
I
gonna,
have a question. I have a question for you.
yeah,
If you'll let me kind of start one off for you.
go for it.
You have who looks to be like a Super Bowl favorite. However, it has never been more unclear who's going to be the starting quarterback.
Yeah,
The captain. You have a guy that they traded 3 first-round picks in Trey Lance,
hmm,
and they've hardly seen him play. And then you have a guy who is literally the exact opposite, the last pick in the draft, Brock Purdy, who came in and did
yeah,
exactly what he needed to do and took him to the AFC Championship game. And then Dan Orlovsky sits there and says Sam Darnold is the best thrower of the football who's been on that team. And
yeah,
I don't know what I think of that, but we all know that the talent is there. What do you think of the 49ers
yeah.
quarterback position? And do you think that could hurt them having a little bit of a controversy there?
Yeah, I that's interesting, Drew. Sam Darnold's a thought with this team, but I do think you see a lot of these analysts out there. They still are in love with the thought of Sam Darnold, what he could be, and why the Jets drafted him top 5. I just don't think the guy's good enough. I don't. I think he would have proved it by now. He's been in enough systems, and I do think I don't know. It's interesting, Drew, the way Shanahan. This is really kind of my sauna hot take of the week, Drew. I go in the sauna at the gym and I just think of a hot take, and this is one I've been sitting on for years with this team, Drew. And it really I think you can see it now, 2 years removed. They traded up. They thought Mac Jones was gonna be the guy, Drew.
Yeah, yeah.
Kyle Shanahan rumored to be in love with Mac Jones, and I can't help but think, yeah, Mac Jones, he would be the perfect quarterback in this system. He's smart, he knows what to do, he's confident, and I worry about this quarterback room, Drew. But I think Brock Purdy,
Yeah,
another Iowa State guy, another guy I've watched his whole career, Drew. And
yeah.
we saw it last year. I wasn't surprised he came in and was competent. And that's really what Kyle Shanahan needs. So, going back to this sauna hot take, my new segment I'm going to be doing every week. And I've thought of this one for years. When they drafted up, they were so unsure. Was it Mac Jones, Trey Lance? The front office kind of just bullied Shanahan and taken Trey Lance. What they should have done, Drew, they had one of the best tight end prospects in our lifetime, Kyle Pitts, available to them. He hasn't fully put it on display yet, but can you imagine that offense with Kyle Pitts, George Kittle, those pass catchers, and all you needed was to just trust that, hey, Shanahan's going to find a quarterback. He's had success
G.
with
They
all
had
these
him already.
quarterbacks. Exactly, Jimmy G. That's why I can't get fired up about Jimmy G being a Raider, even
Yeah.
though I know he's there to just do his thing and get some ass. That's why I'm concerned, Drew. And that's my sauna hot take of the week. They should have drafted Kyle Pitts.
Huh. That's pretty good.
Nobody was saying this either. I was the only guy. You can pull up my tweets. I was saying it at the time. Take Kyle Pitts. Because I'm telling you, Drew, they would have won a Super Bowl by now.
Well,
And they
Jay,
would be the clear cut favorite if they had Kyle Pitts. George Kittle, they're the perfect tight end complement to each other also.
here's my hot take, Jay. Out of all of, we've gone over, they got quite a few options. And with uncertainty at that quarterback position and no clear number one, you're definitely going to have certain guys, whoever's going to be the starter there right now in fantasy is undervalued.
Uh-huh.
So I find myself very often drafting Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I would too. He's a
Listen,
guy I'm going to be high on.
he's sitting there. Let's see. I think he should be up in this grouping with sort of Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Jared Goff. I think you throw Brock Purdy in there. But instead, you are waiting a whole, how many? You're waiting 50 to 60 picks later,
Mm-hmm.
and you can have Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is currently going around Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Sam Howell, Matthew Stafford, Kenny Pickett. I'm taking Brock Purdy out of that crew every day.
Yeah, I like that, Drew. That's very smart. Very smart move on your part.
I
Have you
think
already started
once he gets
drafting?
announced as the QB1, I think you're going to see his ADP shoot
Mm-hmm.
up to around Russell Wilson around pick 132. He's
Yeah.
down at 172 right now. I think it's crazy.
Yeah, I that is crazy. It's kind of sometimes these guys are just slept on, like Josh Jacobs, like we were saying, man. Brock Purdy, everybody knows him, but at the same time, he's gonna be Mister Irrelevant to a lot of people. And even though he
Well,
did what he did last year,
it's
he's definitely
crazy to think
undervalued.
it's crazy to think that the Niners are not going to use the guy that they traded 3 first-round picks
I
for.
don't buy it. I don't buy it, Drew. Brock Purdy healthy week one, he's gonna be the starter there.
But here's the thing, Jay. Even if you want to trade him and just get some value out of him, recoup anything from Trey Lance, teams have to see him.
Yeah,
They have to
yeah,
see
that's
him in
another
order to
thing.
trade for him.
That's why I am fired up about that Kyle Pitts take, man. Because
Yeah.
Trey Lance, they've just wasted that third pick, and can't help but think if I was a Niners fan, I would be very. There would be a lot of pressure to win the Super Bowl this year, and I do think they're one of the favorites to make the Super Bowl at least.
Yeah.
But I want to get into a little more stuff with them, just a little deep dive.
Let's hear it.
Shanahan, I've been saying it. I think he's the best offensive mind, best play designer, best offensive coordinator in the league. I love that he gets the fullback involved with I can't remember how to say his name.
Use check.
Juszczyk, yeah, great little stud. He reminds me a lot of how Lincoln Riley runs his offense, a little bit of Oklahoma. He just every quarterback that's taken a snap under this guy, Drew, has put up career best results. I mean, it really has. It's crazy. We talked about Brock Purdy, his injury. We think he's on track. So, man, that that Trey Lance. I want to move on past that situation that's really kind of held them back. I think they generally have a pretty smart front office there with Lynch running things as their GM. But let's just hope we don't have to see Josh Johnson playing quarterback for these guys in a conference championship game anytime soon, bro. That was
Is Josh
pathetic.
Johnson still on that team?
No, I think he's off because I had to make sure that wasn't a possibility. He's somewhere else. He probably just grinds in the gym and just watches football and just waits for somebody to call him, be like, "Hey, we might need you. If you have the experience." It's kind of got the perfect career. A little
He
bit like,
does. You gotta tip the hat to him. How
yeah.
long ago was he drafted? I mean, he's an older guy.
Oh, 2005, 2006.
Wow.
Yeah. So that might have
Kudos
been his
for
curtain
such a
call
long
last year.
career.
Yeah, that might have been his curtain call last year. But
Maybe.
here's a wild nugget, Drew. Playing off the Shanahan thing, San Francisco has had a player at every position on offense that has been an All Pro before, except one position. You know what that is? Every position on offense has had an All Pro.
Let me think. He's had fullback. It's quarterback.
Yep.
Yeah,
Isn't that crazy?
that's insane. I mean, I was just thinking about it. You know, they've got Trent Williams, they've got Juszczyk, they've got Kittle,
Yeah.
they've got all those defensive linemen, all those linebackers. They've got some great corners. I'm
This
like,
is just an
damn.
offensive stat, but yeah, they have some.
Oh,
We're gonna get to their defense here soon. Yeah.
okay, yeah, that's
But
crazy.
yeah, I really think Brandon Ayuk, Drew, he's got a chance to have a monster season. There's some rumors that he had a nice year last year. There's some rumors OTAs. No Debo Samuel. I don't know. Is Debo hurt or some? He just got a new contract, didn't he?
He got a new contract. I don't believe he's hurt, but generally the consensus is a little down on him.
Uh huh.
I am one to draft Ayuk over Debo,
Ooh.
even in the thought that Ayuk might even get traded. Do they even have money to
Uh
re-sign
huh.
him?
Yeah, and he was a stud last year. I think whenever you're betting on the Niners or against them, he's always a guy that stood out to me last year. I think he's gonna build off that. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like a top five receiving yards leader or something like that. Um, I think he's really flashing talent. They're saying in OTAs this offseason he's really been coming on. So look out for Brandon Ayuk. Defensively, Drew, I think maybe my favorite free agent signing of the entire offseason, and I'm not kidding. They signed Javon Hargrave to come into that D line that's already stacked. I mean, that defense is nasty, bro. They got those opposing quarterbacks. I mean, when you come in, you see that pass rush, you see the dogs they have in that secondary. They want no part. There's some quarterbacks that just want no part of this defense. And they will have to replace D'Amico Ryans as he departs to be the Texans head coach. But man, that the team really rallied around him, and um, just some of the defensive things he was doing. I think the Texans got a great head coach in him. So it'll be interesting. They got a new defensive coordinator coming in, and he was really the guy a lot of Panthers fans thought they should have kept on, Steve Wilkes. They bring him over from Carolina. You know, Matt Rule was let go midway through the year, and he came in, did a nice job with them. So Kyle Shanahan, he's good at hiring defensive coordinators, and it's a good sign when you see. It always sucks when you're a fan of the team, and Drew, you're seeing this with Bieniemy. It sucks when your assistants leave, but that just means you got a great head coach and he knows how to hire good people around him. So that's why I'm very high on the Niners, and we haven't deep dove any of the other NFC divisions, but they're probably going to be my pick, and they were my pick as soon as I saw this Hargrave signing. I think he's probably the best defensive lineman that was available in free agency this year.
Well, he was one of the guys I wanted Chiefs to take.
Uh-huh. Yeah. But no, that really makes me think of Carolina too. We'll get to them at a later point. But I do think the Panthers kind of showed some things, and I'm excited to see the Bryce Young show this year. Um, One last thing, Drew, before we move on. So they're minus 150 to win the division. So lay 150 to win 100. I think that's a bet I want to make on the Niners this year.
I would smash that.
I think that's going to be
No
one of
doubt.
my heavier divisional plays, and I'm trying to get into more future bets because that Chiefs win I had last year really kind of showed me if you can be patient enough with your money, that's you can definitely find a lot of value in that. So they're at 10.5 wins is their over under, Drew. Want to look a little bit at some strength of schedule stuff, and then I'll maybe see if what you think about going over under with that. I got some strength of schedule stuff pulled up here. So the Niners were a whopping minus 20, Drew. Minus 20. Worst in the league by 3 points. Minus 20 for rest advantage. And I think that's a lot of things just naturally the West Coast teams have to deal with. Going over and playing the East Coast, that's always been a gambling note that you want to keep in mind is don't trust the West Coast teams having to play noon kickoffs on the East Coast. It's just tough for your body clock. And it's something you got to be mindful of gambling. You really do. That's why Warren Sharp, he's a great resource. He comes up with all this stuff. Their overall strength of schedule, Drew, is fifth in the league. So that's going to be interesting. See how they deal with that. Pretty tough schedule. But that's kind of how the NFL is naturally. You play a first place schedule when you win first place the next year. You got to play all those teams in your conference that came up first last year. So they'll play the Eagles from the East, and
Oh, that'll be a great game.
they'll play the Vikings from the North, and the South they'll play. God, that division was awful. Who won it again? Tampa.
Yeah.
And they were so god awful. Drew, remember how miserable they were?
God.
So yeah, they got a tough little schedule there. So I was kind of surprised, 10.5. I think this is at least an 11-win team. So I'm going to take the over there. I'm just going to trust Shanahan. It's quarterback play and coaching, man. That's what the NFL is when you break it down in simplest terms, and it's really coaching. I think Shanahan can get, even if it does have to be Sam Darnold for whatever reason, Trey Lance. I think they're going to have success under him. So what are your thoughts
I
on
mean,
10.5 wins?
the big question mark for me is going to be that quarterback
Uh-huh.
because literally every other position out there is solved for. You
Right.
have some of the best receivers on that offense with Debo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. That's two number
Mm-hmm.
ones.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you have Christian McCaffrey,
Yeah, we haven't even talked about him.
the best running back in the league. You've got even behind him Elijah Mitchell. You've got the best fullback. You've got the best left tackle in the game. They had to
Yep.
let go of McGlinchey this
Another
off.
Boomer Sooner boy, Trent Williams,
Yeah,
Hall of
Trent
Famer.
Williams. They had to let go of McGlinchey. He was their stud
Yeah,
right tackle.
that'll be a tough loss.
Ultimately, that defense is also stacked. I mean, those
Uh-huh.
linebackers, Bosa.
Yeah.
It's Charvarius Ward locking down on the outside.
Yeah.
They just have such a solid all around team. Literally, the only question is the quarterback.
Yeah. And
But
I'm fired up. I have to wait till I get my next paycheck, but once I do this upcoming Friday, we're putting some on that division minus 150. Hopefully the odds makers aren't listening, Drew, because I'm gonna hammer that.
I like it.
I know we're only this is only our second division, but I can tell that's gonna be a heavy play for me.
I think it's a
And
good one.
I said it was a 2-horse race with the Seahawks. They're plus 200, you know, a year removed from the Russell Wilson trade. Man, did they look like geniuses pulling that trade
They
off.
do. Yeah, they do.
Geno Smith in a new contract, 3 for 75 million. Not as big of a cap hit as you might think. I think a lot of people thought he was going to get paid more than that.
Yeah.
I expect a little bit of regression from the last year. He put up some gaudy numbers. He's not a franchise quarterback, in my opinion, but he's very serviceable. Um, and that's really what the Seahawks need. They just need a serviceable quarterback until they can find that all-world talent, you know. Offensively, I love the Jackson Smith and Jigba. His name is a mouthful, but I have him in my Jags franchise, which we're gonna play later on after recording this. But they drafted him with their first round pick, and him, Metcalf, and Lockett, man.
God.
I'm not gonna want to bet against these guys a lot, at least until I see, because I do think Pete Carroll's gonna get that defense going. They have sticking offensively though. They have two young awesome tackles, bro, that they drafted recently. They got Kenneth Walker. They even drafted Zach Charbonnet, a running
Yeah.
back out of UCLA. I'm high on, Drew. I don't
Second
know how
round,
much.
wasn't
What's that?
he was a second round, wasn't he?
Yeah, and they're high on him, and I was high on him in his college days. So I think they're going to run the ball a lot, even though they have that great. That's something that they're going to have to be mindful of because they did have his name's escaping me, but one of the offensive coordinators with Russell Wilson, they just ran the ball so much and they're so conservative, and that's kind of why the let Russ cook thing started. Is because he Pete Carroll. I mean, he's been coaching at this level. He's been a big time head coach for 30 years now, so he is kind of setting his ways with stuff. But I think you saw last year. I think you saw get Russell Wilson out of there. Get Geno Smith, who is just a dog. Guys want to run through a brick wall for that guy. You
I mean,
can't
Jay,
underestimate that.
just let me ask you this. How great does it feel to be the head coach of a team and you're sitting there? It's a nervous time because you've got a team like the Broncos on the other phone and they're
Uh-huh.
saying, we want your star quarterback, your Super Bowl winning quarterback. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he won a Super Bowl, didn't he?
Oh yeah. And he should have won 2 if it wasn't for Malcolm Butler.
And you're sitting there saying, we've got our Super Bowl quarterback. These guys are offering us a couple first rounders.
Uh-huh.
Do it.
Oh
And
yeah.
you say, do it. And you go the season. You have an awesome season. And Russell Wilson, who you beat in the regular season, sucks. And he
Yeah.
is nothing without you. And then at the end, you have a top 5 draft pick,
Oh
right?
man.
I mean, and then you're sitting there interviewing quarterbacks with one of the draft picks that you got from this guy. I mean,
Yeah.
how great does that have to feel?
I mean, they have to feel like they're on top of the world, but at the same time, Drew, I get all what you're saying. Their defense is a big concern. They're ranked 30th versus the run last year. You got all these talented runners in this division. You got McCaffrey, Debo, all of them on the Niners. You got Kyler Murray. You got Sean McVay and his creative run scheme. We're gonna get to them next.
Yeah.
The Seahawks have to feel so relieved that they have the Russell Wilson mess behind them. They don't have to use that big a cap hit on him in his late 30s. That's why we'll get to we talked a little bit about Sean Payton, I guess, but I still have so much more to talk. I mean, that guy kind of had the dream job from my perspective, but doing the radio or doing the hits with Cowherd and
Yeah.
doing the media stuff, but he's a coach and he's a smart ass guy, top 5 coach in the league, no doubt. The Cardinals or the Broncos had to put the full court press on him to get him to come there. And so the Seahawks, yeah, they got out at the right time, man. They definitely did. But it's at the same time I can't buy in fully because they weren't expected to do anything last year, Drew, and they really did kind of play above their heads to a degree. That
But they're so
defense,
much more talented.
yeah,
I mean,
they've
you look at what they got through the draft, and
yeah. It's just the defense is gonna. I have to see it with their defense.
they signed one of the top interior defensive linemen from. We talked about him last time from Denver.
Okay. Oh yeah. DJ Jones maybe.
So, it was something along those lines.
Jones. Yeah, but anyway,
So
dude, I think if I want to think of them as anything more than a fringe playoff team like they were last year, I got to see it with this defense. And they did draft maybe, and me and a lot of draft analysts, their top cornerback in the draft coming out in last year's class, Devon Witherspoon. He's going to be a dog. A lot of people thought Seattle they were gonna take Jalen Carter, who was slipping in the draft. I mean, a lot of people thought he was gonna go 1-1 for a little bit, or at least 1-2. He fell all the way down. And Seattle's a team, they value character as much as any team in the league. If there's too many red flags with the guy, they're not gonna sit around and wait for immature guys to figure it out. And that's a lot of the success they've had, even though they've never necessarily been the most talented team in the roster in the league. They probably were there with the Legion of Boom when they did win the Super Bowl 2012 range or whatever. But I think Devon Witherspoon, Drew, he's going to fit so well alongside Tariq Woolen, their other cornerback, and that duo's got some people excited for sure for the 12th man. They even brought back. Did you know this, Drew? I forgot about this. They brought back Bobby Wagner. He's back home.
I do remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just get a legend. Just bring back Bobby Wagner.
Listen, Jay, sitting here listening to you, I also just looked up the NFC, and just by process of elimination, I don't know how you say this team is not going to make the playoffs.
Oh yeah,
I think they have a wild card locked up,
yeah.
sealed, packed in, and held tightly to the chest
I do
because
too.
you've got okay, Dak Prescott is making the playoffs. Kirk Cousins probably making the playoffs.
Yeah, the NFC as a whole, man, it's just not great.
Danny Dimes probably making the playoffs. Jared Goff.
We'll get to the Rams in just one sec. I did want to hit on one last thing. The defensive coordinator Clint Hurt, he's going to be in his second year, and
Yeah.
so there's, rookie year. Let's give this defense a little bit of a pass. I did say they were 30th first to run, and that just scares the ever living shit out of me. With all the talented runners in that division, they're gonna have to come out. They might play in some high scoring games. That might be
Yeah.
a team I look at betting totals over with. Um, and like you were saying, Drew, their over under is 8.5 wins. You think they're getting 9-8 at least?
I say smash the over.
That's
I don't
another one.
I don't think there's any way they don't just beat up on the NFC.
Yeah. I let's take a look at their net rest advantage. I think so. Seattle, where are they? They're at -4, which is on the. There's only about 7 or 8 teams worse than that, so they're about 24th with net rest. Their overall strength of schedule is play a second place schedule. They are the 10th hardest schedule in the league. Now, I love them getting 9-8. Drew, we talk about it. We talk all this out, and we're thinking, okay, we already got two overs. We already like the Niners to win. This is what has hurt me in the past with my gambling, and the odds makers, they want you to bet overs. They want you to bet the unders, and kind of the negativity is really the smart bet a lot of the times. But I can't help but thinking, with the state of the NFC, this team should be 9-8 with the Pete Carroll history, and they're going to have enough team morale. I think that's a thing that really helped them out last year. Getting Russell Wilson out of there, just the stink was off the team, and I think the boys were just able to be themselves. The team flights. That's another thing, Drew. That's a podcast segment I want to do. I kind of steal it from Chris Long and his podcast at all.
Oh yeah.
One of the segments he does is happy flight and bad flight.
Uh-huh.
Who's going on the road and who's having a tough loss, and it's just they're a miserable flight home. Nobody's going to be having any fun. I think the Seahawks are a team that has great team chemistry, and they're going to have a lot of happy flights home to Seattle this year.
I think you're right. Where their over-under is, I would take the over. I would take it at 9.5.
Yeah, that's another one. When I get paid, I'm sorry, I got to invest in some of these. I do. I'm waiting for that paycheck to come. Let's go ahead. If you bet on the Rams to win this division, you're going to get paid out pretty nicely. They're plus 750 to win the West. Like you were saying, Drew, they've kind of been in a Super Bowl hangover now for a while. 5-12 last year. But that's one of my favorite things about the NFL, man. These teams, they can get dramatically or worse or better in one off season. It's why I think coaching is so valuable in football, man. You get the time to prepare, you get those 6 days, and whoever uses it best, that's who's going to win.
Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk, he talks about this a lot, that they're paying the credit card bill.
Yeah.
That a lot of people say the salary cap isn't real. It's just put it on the credit card. Well, that credit card comes due, and they're just paying it right now. It's great. It's fine. They won the Super Bowl. They went out, and that makes it worth it. But that's what I think they are this year. They're a bill-paying team. They did not want Matthew Stafford to be starting for this team.
Yeah, the roster is vastly different from that 21 team that won the Super Bowl, and yeah, man, the coaching, it's all about knowing the strengths and weaknesses of your team, man. And sometimes it's all these teams, they're within 8 points of each other for the most part, all 32 of them, and that's why the NFL is so great. You get the drama, you get the swings late in these games. I mean, no other sport can replicate it. They really can't. But I was just going to say, just another thing till I get into their offense. Without the draft capital as of late, Drew, they just haven't had the flexibility to improve this roster at all. I don't know if you got anything to add on to that, but long story short, I don't think they've improved this roster at all from last year.
I mean, I think it's telling that they traded their wide receiver 2, Allen Robinson, for, I believe, a conditional 7th.
Yeah, that's not a good look. Oh, that's not a good look, bro.
Who is it? Is it Mac Hollins? Who's the number 2 there?
I don't even know, man. And I'm dialed in. It's gonna take me to watch a game or two with the Rams to know like who all is on their team.
They've got Cup.
Maybe I'll get into preseason this year and I'll become a preseason nerd.
And they have Cam Akers, who is hated by the coaching staff.
Yeah. He's a very polarizing guy, Cam Akers.
I'm a guy in fantasy football who does not pick players that are hated by their coaching staff.
Yeah, very smart. Can't draft guys that are in the doghouse, Drew.
And I don't care how many people say it's worth it. His ADP is so cheap this year. If he has to do better than that. I don't care
Yeah.
because I'd rather draft the guy in the 7th round. Whether it's Kyron Williams or Zach Evans, they have
Mm-hmm.
some guys behind him. I think he'll get creative with the run game. He'll use Cooper Kupp when he can,
Yeah.
but I think
Yeah.
they may scratch together 4 or 5 wins.
McVay, man. McVay's right behind Shanahan and Andy Reid for the best offensive minds in the game, in my opinion. Their offense, it really starts with the O line, man. That O line has got to prove it to me. Since
Yeah.
since Andrew Whitworth retired, they've taken a step back, and this offense is pretty simple.
The defense,
Keep Stafford, keep Cup healthy. That's one of the best connections in the league. And Drew, did you hear about that story a couple years ago when Stafford came over? Um, I guess at like 5 a.m. Cup and Stafford had like 5 a.m.
yeah,
film stuff together, and they just you can see, man, that's one of the best punches and 1-2 punches in the league. Stafford to Cup, and
oh
that
yeah,
clutch drive late was really the difference in that Super Bowl with the Bengals. They made some great plays in that Super Bowl together.
they
So
did.
yeah, you got
But
anything to add on that offense?
I think the offense, unfortunately, is going to be the bright star, whereas the defense is going to be a dark cloud that looms
Yeah,
over the team.
yeah. They still have Raheem Morris there as the DC. He's pretty solid. Um, their defense, like their offense, centers around the health and productivity of one guy, and that guy is Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
He's the consensus best player in the game, but he only played in 11 games last year. Kind of had a down year from his lofty standards. I'd expect him to have a bounce back. Things kind of reached a boiling point. They
I,
finally shipped Jalen Ramsey off after many years of trade speculation.
Jay, my hot take out of all this, talking about the sauna hot takes,
Yeah,
I think I don't expect Aaron Donald to come back great.
yeah,
I
I could
expect him.
see it.
This is a guy who wanted to retire
Yeah,
last year. He didn't. He paid in a shitty season, with for his choice to not retire. Granted, he's bringing in the money, but I don't
uh,
expect him to be uh, the top of the league, let alone the top 3. I expect him
mm-hmm.
to be outside of the top 3. And you're talking about a team gaining a star in Bobby Wagner. Well, guess who lost the star?
These Rams.
They just didn't resign him. They traded away Jalen Ramsey, another
Uh
star.
huh.
I mean, I think this defense is going to be a dark cloud.
Uh huh.
You go put up 50 on the Rams, and they put up 27, which would be commendable, but not close enough. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be a tough time on that defense.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And even Sean McVay, man, he was looking like he was gonna try and do some media stuff there last year, and this is right after they won the Super Bowl. So definitely, this is a team 6.5 wins, Drew. I think this is a 6-10 win team, and I wouldn't feel comfortable betting it though, just because they have so many star players. I have so much respect for the greatness of Sean McVay and the offense he runs. So I think that alone will be worth 5 wins or so. And getting into the schedule stuff, Drew, I just can't help but think Goodell has it out for some of these West Coast teams. And the Cardinals, we'll get into them next. The Cardinals actually have one of the easier schedules in the league, bro. But let's see, where do the Rams? The Rams are 15th in strength of schedule, net rest edge. They're second worst behind San Francisco, minus 17, and average. The average for that is Green Bay and Buffalo at 0. So they have about the most modest schedule, if you will, out of anybody in the league. But the Rams and Niners way down there on their own. Your Chiefs, Drew, are third. And then Atlanta, for some reason, minus 12. They have a tough schedule of rest edge, at least.
Okay.
But 6.5 wins. What do you have any kind of feel for that, Drew?
I personally feel under on it.
Yeah, I do too.
I just don't think they're going to get outside of 5 wins.
I do too, and I'm thinking about it more. That could be maybe the smartest bet out of all of them that we've discussed today, because a lot of the times, Drew, the bets you feel worst about are the smartest bets in the long run. And who knows, maybe I just need to make bets on all these things and just see how it works out. That's why my mindset these next 6 months till I get my own place. It's all about saving money. So this podcast, I am gonna still keep that up, still keep my gambling up, but that just adds fuel to the fire, Drew. We got to make money this year,
Yeah, absolutely.
So this podcast, talking it all out with you, just our different perspectives, that's really going to help us both out, I think, with our passions.
I mean, listen, they're in sell mode, the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Jay, yeah, I am going to be building up my chat bots. That's going to be, I think it's going to be a big thing for me.
Yeah, you're going to have to get me onto that wave eventually. But yeah, let's wrap it up, Drew. We got the Cardinals. They're 25-1 to win this division. And, this is a team I followed closely over the years, being the big Kyler Murray fan I am. Coach Bro Kingsbury, he was the tech coach for a while, so I just know him a lot. And Coach Bro is gone. It's about damn time. I mean, they were the most undisciplined team in the league. Outside of the Cowboys, man, I watched this team closer than anybody. I am such a Kyler Murray fanboy. Kingsbury, his issue, and this is probably how I'd be if I was a head coach, he just wanted to be everybody's friend. And it's hard. I mean, some of these guys, you can't come down too hard on these guys that are our age, Drew, our generation. But, man, when you're running a football team, you just can't let some of this stuff go. I mean, allegedly they were doing some phone breaks during their long meetings. Like, what?
Wow.
You can't go an hour, 2 hours of just being locked in on film. They have to have phone breaks? What a bunch of pussy-ass shit. Cliff Kingsbury has made the world think Kyler Murray's a bum. And he's not, Drew. He's going to be healthy this year. He's going to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback or whatever.
By the way, I'm in the bum crowd.
They have a lot of shit working against them with the coaches in their division and all that. But give Kyler Murray a damn chance, because he hasn't had it. I'm not a fan of this Jonathan Gannon hire either, bro. His defense got their pants pulled the fuck down by Andy Reid in that Super Bowl, especially in that second half. Why the fuck did the Cardinals want this guy?
Did you see his introduction with Buda Baker?
No, it was probably terrible because that guy wants out of town also.
Dude, it was Pat McAfee's show made fun of it so hard. So, Gannon walks in and he's like, the Cardinals are filming him and they put this out online.
Yeah.
So Gannon walks into the facility and he's kind of like people pleasing. Hey, nice to meet you. Hey, doing that whole thing. And Buda Baker walks up and he goes, "Oh, hey," and he says, like, there's a little awkward moment there where they're like, "Oh God, what's this introduction?" And Jonathan Gannon goes, shots, explosives, pew, 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 pew. And Buda Baker's like, okay. So whenever this guy comes up, the Pat McAfee show goes, shots, 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 shots. I
What a
mean,
dumpster fire this is.
you could just see how awkward it was. And then for
Oh,
the Cardinals to put it out on social media, it buried him from
dude.
day one. Oh,
Dude,
it's
that won't jive well with Kyler Murray and his personality either. I mean, he's not going to be back till like week 5. The Buda Baker thing you were saying he wants out. DeAndre Hopkins they just
oh,
released.
God.
JJ Watt's out of there. So Drew, I'm gonna go ahead and call it now. Kyler Murray's gonna come in there and they're gonna win a couple games because of him. But man, they might have the number 1 pick and they might draft Caleb Williams, who
Yeah.
started his career so many parallels.
They
Starts
might
his career at OU,
they
goes
might
to
trade it
USC.
and get Marvin Harrison Jr. instead.
Now that would be something I would get excited about. Because I do know if they have that number 1 pick, no matter how good Kyler is, they're going to take Caleb Williams because he's a once in a generational prospect. He really is. I think he's got another year to prove it in college to me. And there's some character concerns there with him, but I think Drew, I can't help but think he's a mix of Dak Prescott and Patrick Mahomes. The way that guy plays, and I might have already said this to you. I don't know, but man, they tried to say Andrew Luck, Trevor Lawrence. They're the best draft prospects since Elway in the '80s or whenever he came out. Caleb Williams has a chance to be a little Patrick Mahomesy with his wizardry and has the body and running of Dak Prescott. So
I mean, Jay, just imagine this. You're an opposing fan, right? Let's say you're a Rams fan and the Cardinals are coming to town and their starting quarterback has his fingernails painted.
yeah,
And he shows up wearing some dress sort of
yeah.
thing. And he just kicks your ass, runs up and down and kicks your ass and leaves with the win. And you're just
Yeah,
sitting there just in anger that
that
this
wouldn't
man
be good
showed
for
up.
you, Drew.
Oh,
That wouldn't be good for you. And yeah, he had I think it was when they played Utah in the Pac-12 championship. He had like "fuck Utah" on
yeah.
his. He's just a little immature, and I'll talk about this more as I dive in deep with college football, with maybe some Heisman preview stuff as we get really close to the season. But for a lot of these guys, he's the clear-cut favorite to repeat as Heisman. But the favorite in the odds, at least coming into the year, never wins the Heisman. It's always a guy we're not even thinking of that's on our radar right now. And so Caleb Williams, people kind of expect him to go in there, did what he did last year. But Pac-12 is a tough division, Drew. I've previewed it a little bit in my pods this week. It's not a shoe-in they win that conference, and he's going to have to live up to the Heisman standard he put on last year, where they didn't win that conference, but they were damn close and really showed, especially with it being their first year out there at USC, they being away from Oklahoma. Riley and Caleb Williams did show just how great they are at what they do. So the Cardinals, as shitty as they're going to be, I want to get into their offense just a little bit. As shitty as they're going to be, 25-1 to win this division, they're an interesting team to follow because Kyler Murray, talented quarterback, if he's made available, I know he has a huge contract, but I think there's going to be some teams interested in him. I kind of think he had a year from hell last year. I mean, it was just this time last year, Drew. Was he talked about as QB1 at all in the fantasy community? I know he's at least top 5.
I mean, the two worst picks you could have had last year were QB5 and QB6. And
Oh
they
yeah.
were that was Kyler Murray and Trey Lance.
Uh huh. Wow, that's crazy. Two guys we talked about today.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's get into the offense real quick because I know we're going long. We're approaching 2 hours almost, Drew.
Yeah.
Maybe. Um, I like how they maneuvered their draft position, moving back, and because there was a lot of talk. Cardinals, that draft picks up for sale. They move back, and they still got a really heralded prospect, Paris Johnson out of Ohio State, offensive tackle, and that's what they need. Kyler's coming off his ACL. That O line hasn't been any good his whole career there. So really, I was interested to see who their OC is going to be because Cliff Kingsbury had a ton of control of that team, the offense, and there was things I like about Cliff Kingsbury's offense, and I think they need to stick with a great offensive mind with Kyler to get the most out of him. Apparently, they hired this Ivy League nerd. He's got an economics degree at Yale, and he's kind of worked his way up with the Vikings, and now he finds himself running this putrid offense, Drew, at least until Kyler's back, week 5 or whatever. So, if anything,
Bad.
the Cardinals could be interesting just how putrid they are, if anything.
I mean,
Especially that first 5 weeks, Drew. I'm going to be hammering against them, betting team totals under for the Cardinals, all that kind of shit.
so I'll
Um,
make a quick fantasy football connection.
yeah.
Cam Akers and James Conner can both be had at about pick 72, which is the very beginning of the 6th round.
Uh huh.
No, that's the end of the 6th round, beginning of the 7th.
Uh huh.
James Conner or fucking Cam Akers. I pick Conner only because he's liked by the coaching staff, I
Uh
hope.
huh.
And
Yeah.
there's nobody else. They
There
traded
really
away
isn't.
DeAndre Hopkins.
Is Zach Ertz still there, the tight end?
But he's so here's what the fantasy football community has done. And hear me out here. When people put money behind their decisions, that's when you get the truest information, I believe.
Right.
Zach Ertz is undrafted. And I've heard reports that his roster spot is even in
Oh,
consideration.
let me cut you off, Drew. I
Yeah.
don't know if you know much about Zach Ertz, but he was on the Eagles when they won their Super Bowl, and he's a
Yeah, I
he's
know.
a stud.
But
Were you
he's
saying
old.
they don't pay him a contract or?
No, he's just they don't apparently there was something. I think there must have been something in his film. I haven't
Mm,
cared enough to look into it, but
okay.
nobody has him as a sleeper in fantasy
Yeah,
football.
too many question marks surrounding this whole team, and I do think James Conner could be one of the few. I don't know what their receiving core looks like either,
They've
but I
got
do think.
Marquise Brown, they've got
Oh, right,
Hollywood,
right. Yeah, and he's
but
an OU guy, and it's funny you say that, bro. I've been talking a little bit about my faith with God, but Marquise Brown, he was at OU. He was so damn electric. Like that's why the Ravens took him with the first round pick. He's got blazing speed. He could be a little Tyreek Hill type of guy. It's interesting though. His big thing, like his trademark and like what he puts on like his social media. I haven't been following him a lot lately, but his thing is call God. He's one of my favorite guys to ever play at OU because looking back on it now is just like, yeah, that guy, he's got God on his side, man. So anybody out there, call God, get in prayer. And I don't want this to get off track and talk about faith or anything. Keep it sports centric, but
yeah.
God, God's giving me a lot of signs right now, bro. Shit outside of this, but a lot of this podcast stuff too.
Well, he's not showing very many signs to the Arizona Cardinals.
Right. So yeah, that's a little bit of their defense. Then we'll get out of here. Gannon, we talked about all the cringy stuff he's doing. He was the least desirable of the coaching candidates that were realistic, and it's just no surprise that's who the Cardinals had to settle with. Um, we could look like asses, Drew, but This team's
I don't
going
think.
nowhere in a brutal division. I mean, he's going to have – what's that, Drew? You got something to
I just don't think we're going to look like asses. This just feels like a loser team.
Yeah. He's going to have to come out. They're going to have to try a lot of different formations, a lot of different types of schemes if he wants to have any success. He's going to have to coach his ass off. And I do like another draft pick they got on defense, B.J. Ojolari out of LSU. I think he can come in be pretty solid for them. But final note, Drew, with the Cardinals here, it's 4.5 wins. I'm taking the under. What do you got? You there?
I mean, 4.5 is pretty. It's a pretty good line, but
They're in full rebuild mode.
yeah, but it's it's placing money on a decision like this.
Yeah. I do think with
Because
Kyler, he can
if
come
you
in and
think
win some
about
games.
the idea of any given Sunday, that is so true.
Uh-huh.
James Conner has been talking in the media. He loves that they're underrated.
Yeah.
Clayton Tune, I hear some positive things about
Oh, is
the
he
guy.
going to be their quarterback the first
He's going
5
to start
weeks?
out. He's going to start it. I
Clayton
mean,
Tune?
yeah.
Where did he play college, man? He played somewhere Northwestern or something.
BYU.
BYU. Oh my gosh, dude. There's just too much new here and Kyler out. This team's gonna be in the running for the first pick. And
Yeah.
I don't want us to focus too much on Caleb Williams because there is another big time prospect, Drake May, coming out of North Carolina, and he's gonna be a major storyline too. So it's going to be interesting to see how Kyler Murray handles all that. I think the kind of guy he is, Drew, he's a dog. He's probably the
I
best.
heard Drake May puts mayo in his coffee.
Ooh, that's the red flag. But Kyler, man, he is a dog. He's going to use all this as motivation. I know it. I mean, he was maybe the best player to ever play Texas high school football. I think he won 4 state titles. I don't think he lost a single game in Allen, Texas. That's why also, Drew, just random thing that came to my mind. Like 2 years ago when they played at the Cowboys on like a Monday night, I knew the Cardinals were going to roll them because Kyler loves to play at Jerry's World. That's his kind of his home away from home. So I haven't looked too much at their schedule. Let's see what they have strength wise. See if I can. They're 22nd in the league. So pretty easy schedule. Net rest. They are +5. So by far in this division, they're going to have the rest edge over everybody. So if Clayton Tune can get them to 2-3 when Kyler comes back, don't write this off as a team hitting over. Just the more I talk about it now. But there's just too many things with that head coach, too much newness there, and the fact that they're playing against 3 head coaches in that division that are just light years ahead of Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah.
So
But ultimately,
that's a no bet for me.
it's so crazy to say that they can't win 5 out of 17.
Yeah, and that's what the odds makers want you to think, though. So it's tricky with these. Like, I'm gonna do this podcast, and I do think doing all this content is gonna make me an even better gambler. But inevitably, man, there's gonna be some bets that I'm just like, man, I can't believe that lost. And that's the beauty of the NFL.
But I really do think this is one that you have to really consider maybe not even betting. It
Yeah,
seems like the easiest bet. I don't know. It seems like
this
the
is
easiest
just
bet.
from my perspective, it's just a root for Kyler team. And that's kind of I have teams like that, and why I'm really interested in getting into fantasy best ball with you, Drew, because
Yeah.
I do think Kyler Murray's going to be undervalued a lot. And do these leagues you play in, do they have like two quarterback system, or is it just one quarterback?
In best ball,
Yeah.
well, I'll tell you this. So there's leagues you can do where it's 6 teams in the league. So you're only drafting amongst 5 other players, five
Oh
other
yeah.
people. I try and go for 3-star quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I mean, I try and go for Mahomes, Lamar, Joe Burrow.
Mm-hmm. And
I
then,
try and go for it, and I try
so
and be
you're
the
saying you
highest.
have 6 quarterback spots?
So you have only one counts each week.
Oh, right.
But
So you want to get as many good ones as you can, though, I guess.
so basically, in this style of league, you're drafting amongst 5 other people. It's a
Uh-huh.
6-person league. And so
Right.
in that league, I try and take 3-star QBs because you can have them for cheap and you can get
Yeah.
3 studs. I go for them
No, that's
early in the
smart.
draft. Um, but it just depends. I heard somebody say on Best Ball, you be like water. You know, when
Yeah.
water needs to fit into this container or that container, it fits.
Uh-huh.
If you just take what the market gives you in Best Ball,
Mm-hmm. No,
you
I'm
don't.
I'm fired up to learn more about it with you, bro.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for you to get into it next year.
Yeah. So are you already drafting, or when are you gonna start drafting all your leagues? Because I definitely want to
Oh,
play in like leagues. I want to do like some tournament stuff too, because I think we'd be good too, man. I think our knowledge. I think we should consider playing in some like big leagues and see how like if we can make some real dough.
Jay,
But I
I've
don't know
been
a whole lot
I've been
about it.
drafting.
Oh, really?
Oh, I've been drafting.
I love that.
I think the way you do it is you hit it early. Right around the end of the draft is when I started because that's when you get a good idea of who's got what roster.
Uh huh.
And I'll tell you this, I got an enormous discount on Sky Moore.
Oh yeah.
It's it's the happiest thing that I can see. So I
Oh, I bet
I
you're pumped up with that with your Chiefs. That would be great for you if he went off.
I did so many leagues. All right, if you look at my exposure right now, I'm about 50% of my leagues I have Sky Moore. And every single time I used to have him 60%. Every single time I drafted him when he was so late in the draft.
Oh
His
yeah.
pick was about 125 to 130, somewhere within there. And I just kept picking him because I knew he's going to be wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2
Uh
for the
huh.
Kansas City Chiefs. I just kept picking him so late. And now he is hopped up from 125 to 130 to 95.
Oh wow. Yeah, you've been ahead of the curve.
I don't draft him anymore. I sit there and take other guys,
Yeah.
and now his exposure is about down to 50%. I have him literally in 50% of leagues. So I feel very happy that I got in early on Sky Moore. I was tweeting about it, I was talking about it, so I think we'll have some good right around the draft time.
Yeah.
We ought to just start to stake our flag on certain players and watch their ADP rise.
Mhm. I love it, dude. That's a great point, and I can't wait to get in the mix with you. So you got to let me know just I probably will only play. I don't know how many leagues would you say you're in total.
About 100.
So maybe I'll try and do like 50, and I probably won't. Like I've been saying, I need to wait for my next paycheck to get in. But maybe like, would it be too late for me to start drafting in like September or like late August?
I mean, players will be more priced probably to their normal
Uh-huh.
expectation. I tell you this, like honestly, I hate to say it, but right now might be the time
Oh
because the
yeah.
training camp news is coming out, and if you can study that stuff and you can get in early on some players, by the time it's September, everybody already knows who's going to be who.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Training camps are definitely starting to heat up. So I think what I'm going to do, Drew, just send me some websites or some leagues you're fixing to come up draft this week, and I'll see what I can do and get in on some because they're pretty cheap to enter, aren't they?
Yeah, they're about there's $3 a league
Okay.
you can do.
Yeah, so let's get into some of those together. That'll just give us even more to talk about.
That's great.
Dude, this was a great episode, man. I love it. Let's go ahead and wrap it up here. But for the people out there, Drew, plug your socials,
Yeah,
where they can
so
follow you.
at Drew Porter Net, that's my Twitter. Go ahead and follow me there. That's where I put out really mostly all of my content. You know, if you want to see my YouTube, you'll see it from there at Drew Porter Net and drewismarketing.com.
Oh
Very
yeah.
soon you're gonna see a Drew bot that you can
Yes.
an AI Drew bot that you can get in there and chat with.
Let's go. That's awesome, man. So yeah, go follow Drew on all that. I mean, me and Drew, we were only together at OU for 1 year, but there's a reason we're 27. Drew, are you 26?
28.
Dude, yeah, so you're like a year older than me.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't even realize that, but there's a reason, we only had 1 year together, but now we're really hitting our primes and we're taking this shit seriously. And I know nobody's in here watching really, but it's all about connections. And I got a couple connections, I think. I know, Drew, you've been doing your entrepreneurship stuff for so long. You got all kinds of connections. And we're just going to build this organically, man. I got some socials too at jbirdie23. That's my Twitter. I'll be on there tweeting a lot of sports takes. I was doing it for a while when I had my podcast, but that's something I'm going to rededicate myself to. It's going to help me with the pod. I got so many takes, man. I really could do a solo pod the rest of my life, 3 days a week. But I think I'm going to get a lot of that creative energy off on Twitter in the meantime.
Yeah.
Instagram and TikTok really, I've really gotten heavy into those this past week, and Drew's been a big
Hey,
help with that.
Jay,
Um,
can I give you a little piece on that?
yeah.
And then we'll wrap it up right after this, but I just wanted to say on that I've been seeing you. You have been hustling
Oh
and putting
yeah.
together some good stuff. One thing I want to give as even a recommendation to do on top of all that, now that you've got the blue check mark, go get in and say something controversial. Make a stake on a
Okay.
player and say he's bad.
That
You know,
Kyle
just
Pitts thing. That's why I'm excited for the sauna hot take of the week because I
well,
really
here's
think
what I want to
I'm the
say.
only person was saying that Kyle Pitts shit.
If you get in and respond early on somebody, I discovered this week. I responded early on one of Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk.
Uh
I
huh.
responded early on a post of him and I said something controversial and I went viral. I
Oh
picked
really?
up some followers from it.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah. No, that's
I,
always been a focus of mine. Like I am very dedicated to listen to my podcasts and like Big Cat and PFT from Barstool. Those are my favorite dudes ever. And I have so many like Barstool ideas. Like I could have like a own podcast. Do you know much about the dozen trivia
no.
that they do? This guy Jeff D'Lo, he created this trivia league for all the Barstool personalities, like around the pandemic. And PFT and Brandon Walker, they started this team, the Experts, and then they added this girl Fran, who's like killer with like pop culture and these celebrity mashup questions. And so it's like a whole ass league now. Like they do like a live show
Jay,
from
are you there?
Chicago. Yeah, can you not hear me, Drew? I think you're muted, buddy. But anyways, there's a lot of barstool stuff I got ideas with. Drew's telling me. Drew's a great friend. I think Drew's got to get off, so he gave us our socials, and that's good. It's a good ending point. I got to play Jags franchise anyway, so I know I was kind of going long there, but yeah, just some stuff with Barstool. He's telling me get in on the type of personalities you like. I gotta make social media a big thing for me in the meantime because I have the blue check mark now on Twitter. It's I can get a following like that, so I'm gonna use Twitter and TikTok and Instagram to get my name out there as much as I can. Website Find Your Inner Pirate. That's gonna be a thing 6 months from now down the road. So I just want to get people onto the scent. Find your inner pirate. You're listening to this on Monday. You're having an ass time. You got a terrible week ahead of you. Just remember, find your inner pirate. Call God. Subscribe to the Find Your Inner Pirate podcast if you're not. Subscribe to my YouTube at jbirdie23. Same for Twitter, TikTok at jbirdie37. And that's what we got going. Let's go. 8:37 D Fish right now is when we're signing out. Peace.